Hi, welcome to Lights, Camera, Author. I'm Jim Juno, and with me today, I say a special guest a lot, but this time a really special guest, Dr. Kathy Reichs, who is the creator of the Tim Prince Brennan novels, the Queen of Crime right now. And Kathy, welcome to Lights, Camera, Author.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Now, your new book. Now, let's see what happens when I hold it up. It may disappear because of the new book. We'll put it in on post-production. Is Fire and Bones, and this is your 23rd
It is.
Tempe Brennan novel. I mean, does it seem that many? I mean, to you?
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago that I sat down to begin what became Deja Dead.
True, and actually, this is you and I are in our 23rd year. Like to call you a friend.
Yes, of course.
In 23 years we've known each other now,
Yeah.
and I was honored enough to help you on a couple of your books, and I added like maybe a penny to your $1 million empire, but this is the first time, if I can recall correctly, this is the first time you dealt with fire in one of your novels.
Yes. Yes. Other than lighting a fireplace.
Right. But the book begins with a woman named Skylar, who is in a building. Now, I'm not going to give away anything at the end, okay? We're not going to be one of these cases where so and so did it. No, but Skylar opens up. The fire is coming into her, and what turns out to be an illegal bed and breakfast.
Yes.
And at the same time, Tempe is getting ready for a romantic getaway with Andy and Andrew Ryan. So did you go to Washington D.C. for the research in this book?
I actually graduated from American University, which is in undergrad, which
That's
is in
right.
Washington, D.C. And my daughter and two of my grandkids live in Washington, D.C. So
Wow.
I know the district pretty, and my part-time job as an undergrad was as a tour guide on those tourmobiles that drive around the tidal basin and the Capitol and the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. So I had to learn a lot of trivia about the district. So I'm pretty familiar with that setting.
Fantastic. Now now in the book, Tempe, like we said, she's in Charlotte. She's getting ready to go to Savannah, Georgia,
Right,
with Andy.
right.
Now, and that's as far as I'm going to go with the plot of the book.
Okay. Yeah.
Except for one thing, she gets a call, and you introduce, and I believe this is a new character. I don't believe you mentioned her before.
Okay, Ivy Doyle. Yeah.
Ivy Doyle, who is a telejournalist
Yeah.
or a television broadcaster, and well, I'll let you tell the story. Ivy calls her.
Yeah, normally Tempe doesn't have, she's not very welcoming to the media, especially if she's working on a case. But this is a very persuasive young woman, and Tempe ends up going to DC to work on this fire, and Ivy is there covering this fire. So they do end up becoming, I don't know, kind of co-conspirators in solving. A body turns up in this fire that's not supposed to be there, that's totally unexpected. There were 4 victims of the fire. That was not a surprise. But this 5th victim that's buried in a sub-basement, a sub-cellar of this old building, that's a surprise. And who is she and what's she doing there? And Tempe gets very involved in why is this tiny, vulnerable woman dead and buried in, and how long has she been there? This is an old building. It's in a neighborhood called Foggy Bottom. And I've always been fascinated by that name, Foggy Bottom. In fact, I wanted to call the book Foggy Bottom Bones, and my publisher said, no, we're not doing that. So anyway, yeah, Tempe becomes very committed to finding the truth about who is this woman and why is she buried in this old building that burned down. And then we have a number of other fires that take place, so it becomes even more sinister.
Now, also, and you explain very well. I mean, Ivy sets up a Zoom interview like we're doing now uh, with Tempe Brennan, and you explain a lot about what goes into identifying bodies that were burned in fire.
Yeah, that's each of my books. I introduce a different aspect of forensic science, and I've never done fire and arson investigation. So I thought I would. That's why we're seeing the fire in this book, and we do learn a bit about the impact of fire on human body, which is not good. Yeah, and how does one investigate a fire? How does the arson specialist, what does that person look for in figuring out if it was arson or not arson and the pattern of the fire, etc.
How many fire investigations do you feel you've worked in your career?
I've never had to go to a fire that I can recall. I've never had to go on site to a fire scene. I don't think. But I've certainly worked on the victims of fires.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's a totally different. A lot of times, the only thing you can depend on, hopefully, is DNA from the bones. Correct?
That's correct, or dental records. Dental records might survive, they might not. Teeth might crack. The head, one of the things that happens is the brain has got a lot of water in it, and so when that's heated to boiling, it expands, so the skull explodes, sometimes in fires. So yeah, I've had to work on victims of that.
Yeah. Some of us have more water on the brain than others. I've been accused of that. So
Yeah.
Ivy Doyle, what what was her inspiration?
I just wanted to create a character, to introduce a character for possible future development, who's a bit younger than Tempe. Ivy is a friend of Tempe's daughter, Katie. She's older than Katie, but she's certainly younger than Tempe. So I just thought it would be fun for that play off between the two women who do get along very well and mesh well, but they are of a slightly different age.
So we could be seeing Ivy in the future.
Well, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe, I know. And we get to get all the familiar people and animals like Birdie. Birdie must be the oldest living cat now in history.
He's about 55 now, I think. So.
How are things different now than when you were writing Deja Dead? How is it like night and day in the forensic anthropology?
Oh, in that aspect, I thought you meant from my point of view, because when I wrote Deja Dead, I didn't have a publisher. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just writing this book that I thought would be the kind of book I like to read. Whereas now it's quite different. I have a contract and I have a deadline and a due date, and there's a little more pressure in that respect. There's less pressure in that I know the book is going to be published by a good publishing house. In the field of forensic anthropology, of course, the big DNA in practically every forensic specialty is the big gorilla is DNA. We didn't have DNA we had it, but we didn't appreciate the forensic applications of DNA back in, the day when I started writing.
So nowadays that's what like it's almost become a crutch, like what a lot of people lean on.
Yeah.
And it's hard to
Yeah.
get out of that. It's hard not to fall into that trap, isn't it?
Of just relying on the DNA.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can't always get DNA. And from burned remains, for example, you might not get any. You can, but you might not get any DNA. And you may have to rely on the traditional dental records and fingerprints if you have them.
Do you ever foresee a time that you would stop writing Temperance Brennan novels?
I'm starting to. I'm starting to think about that. Maybe it's time to. Everybody I know is retiring, it seems, but except me. Yeah. So I don't know. This is the second book of a two-book contract, so we'll see. We'll see.
Everybody, all the fans of Tempe are going no right now. You know,
Hopefully.
I mean, Agatha Christie wrote up until she was like 140 years old. You
That's
know,
true. I'm not doing that.
but you have other books besides Tempe Brennan novels, and could we see more of those?
The Virals books, yeah, I wrote a series of young adult books called The Virals. They feature Temperance Brennan's 14-year-old great niece, Tori Brennan. Um, I wrote those with my son, and he's kind of moved on now. He has definitely moved on. He's writing his own series. He's done 2 series, I think, Nemesis, Genesis, something, and then The Dark Deep, which is kind of a middle grade series. So I don't know. It's possible. It's possible there'll be other things.
What drew you to fire this, or did I already ask? I don't think I've asked you that before.
Yeah, it's an aspect of forensic science. It's one of the sections within the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, which is the fire and arson. I think that's what they call it, fire and arson. It's something I haven't touched on, and there's some really interesting aspects to it, to how one investigates a fire. I thought initially I thought I'd make one of the firefighters a much more central character. That didn't work for some reason. That didn't work out. Whereas Ivy Doyle, just kind of did work out. So she becomes a secondary character versus the fireman. But I just thought it would be fun to look into how fires are investigated and fought and put out and started.
I would be remiss if I did not ask you. Now, those of you who are not familiar with her books, first off, Kathy Reichs books, first off, get familiar with them. Okay. But if I said the TV show Bones on Fox, then everybody goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that show," and actually coming up in 2025, it will be the 20th anniversary of that show first coming on the air, I believe.
Yeah, we went on air in 2005. You're right.
2005, yeah, and it was on the air for 12 years. Longest running scripted show on Fox.
Yeah.
I believe still, right?
I think we're still the longest running scripted drama. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
it starred Emily Deschanel and David Boreanaz. Did I say that correct? Boreanaz?
Yeah.
You kept 4 of the 5 characters together for all 12 years on the show. Emily Deschanel and David Boreanaz and Angel, the character who played Angel.
Angela.
Angela, I'm sorry, Angela.
Kyla Conklin. Yeah.
Yeah,
And Pine played Dr. Hodgins, Jack Hodgins.
yeah.
And Tamara, who played Cam, the pathologist.
245 episodes, I believe, is what there
Might have
was.
been 246, but you're awfully close.
246?
I think it was 246, yeah, but who's counting?
That's right. Okay. Hey, numbers and me, I don't mess around. I don't fool around with numbers because I'm not good at them. But I was going to ask you, let's ask a few questions about the TV show because it is Lights Camera Author. Was Emily Deschanel, did she have a part? Did she have the part immediately on her audition? And you said that's Tempe Brennan.
Yes, yeah, that's pretty much the way it happened. David was with the project from the beginning, so we knew who our Celie Booth was going to be. And a lot of actresses came in and read for the part. But when Emily came in and read with David for the part, she just made some theatrical gestures. She took a step toward him instead of away from him. And everybody goes, "Whoa, this is the one." Yeah.
Can you tell me who else may have been considered? Anybody you can share with us?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember. I honestly.
Oh. But you produced the show. Now, how different is doing TV as opposed to writing your books?
Yeah, I was a producer. I worked mainly with the writers though. I got to LA as much as I possibly could. I wrote 5 or 6, I think, episodes. It's really fun to do it because when you do what's called breaking the story, you do it collectively. You go into the writer's room and you just brainstorm. There's a big blank whiteboard divided for our show into 6 sections because we had 6 scenes in the show, 6 acts in the show. And you just start throwing out ideas for your main story and then your secondary story. And then there might be a tertiary story, which is the same way I structure the books. There's your main story, which is the crime, and then the secondary story, which is something going on in the lives of the characters and the social lives of the characters. So in that way, it's very similar. What's different writing for television is that you don't have to describe anything because the viewer sees it on the screen. You don't have to describe, the lab that they're in or the dress that she's wearing. It pretty much boils down to dialogue, just straight dialogue.
Would you say it's easier writing for TV as opposed to writing your books, since you don't have to describe anything?
Well, no, it's different. It's just different. You have to be much more economical and much more concise in the writing. And since it is just dialogue, you have to be really true to each of those characters. What kind of dialogue? What would this character say? Although you do that in the books as well.
Is there an aspect of the books that you haven't done yet, but you're really keen on getting?
Oh, I'm working on the next one, which is what,
24?
24. So I'm pretty much immersed in that. I'm not going to give away what's going on in that book, but no, I'm not looking beyond that. Usually when I get about 2/3 of the way through the book I'm writing, then I start, beginning to have particles of thoughts about what the next book might be and what forensic science I might use. Sometimes it's because I've read something triggers it, a little story in the news. Sometimes I meet every Wednesday with Zoom with 5 other female forensic anthropologists, and we talk about all kinds of things. And sometimes something comes out of that I find really interesting. I attend the American Academy of Forensic Sciences meetings every year and attend papers in all the different specialty areas, dentistry and engineering and fire and arson and whatever, DNA, biology, I forget what all the sections are. And I get lots of ideas from doing that as well.
You've been all over the world, of course. You have two headquarters, one in Charlotte and one in Montreal. Um, is there a place in the world that you would like to go to and investigate a murder? Not a murder, but a death.
Well, there are lots of places I'd like to travel, places I haven't been to. I've never been to the Amazon down in that area. I'd like to do that.
You just went to Africa, though, didn't you?
I've been to Africa several times. Yeah, half a dozen times. East Africa and South Africa primarily. Well, North Africa too, Morocco and yeah.
I saw your Twitter feed. You had posted some pictures of
Yeah, I took
Africa.
every year, I take the whole family, all the kids, all the grandkids. There was like 13, 14 of us, and we go somewhere together as a family. We've gone to Ireland, we've gone to Africa on safari. I forget where else we've gone. This year we went to Honolulu to Hawaii,
Hawaii.
Big Island and Kauai. But I've already sent Tempe to Hawaii, so I probably won't be sending her there again.
And now let me ask you this. We don't want to give away anything in the book, but the endings, do they get progressively easier for you to write, or do they get harder for you to write?
Well, I have to think of the twist for each book. Hopefully I provide an ending that surprises the reader, that they haven't figured it out. If I always feel like when I'm reading a thriller, if I figure it out, then I'm a little disappointed in the author. So I want to keep the reader guessing until the very end. So it's challenging trying to come up with, and you can throw in, it's legit to throw in red herring clues, false clues, as long as they make sense and as long as you tie them off. You can't just throw them in there and then just let them forget about them. So yeah, that makes because it's like solving a puzzle. I think people like to read thrillers because it is challenging and they do try to solve the puzzle before the author gives them the answer.
I'm just wondering, I know you've already said you're on the next book is book 2 of this contract, and we don't know what's gonna hope be in store for Tempe after that. Is there I'm trying to not to make this sound like a question I just asked because it's a different question, but is there a place in the United States that you want to take Tempe that you haven't yet?
Hmm. I might want to take her to Chicago. I don't think I've taken her there, have I? It's a city, it's a wonderful city. I love Chicago. I was born there. I haven't lived there in forever, but
Oh, White Sox. Yes, indeed.
yeah, we're the Cubs, you know.
What's that?
Son is a Cubs fan, so
You are a Cubs fan?
my son is a Cubs
Oh,
fan.
your son is a Cubs fan. I want to say, I thought you were a White Sox fan for some
Yeah,
reason, you know.
I tend to watch the White Sox more, but he likes the Cubbies.
I tell you what, I love Chicago myself with Ed. I don't know if you've ever been to a place called Ed DeBevick's.
Oh, yeah, it's up. Yeah, Ed
Yeah.
DeVet. Yeah, I
Ed
have.
Ed's Burp. You
Okay.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's um I would love to see Tempe in Chicago. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Uh so what what all is going on with you today? Is it more book interviews? Um
Literally today, or you
well,
mean in general today?
let's do both today. And then
Today is back-to-back interviews. Yeah,
back to back interviews. Okay.
until about 4 o'clock. Right now I'm working on the next book. As I said, I am talking to you from my beach house, which is near Charleston, South Carolina. I'm down here with one of my daughters and two of my grandsons. So when I finish the interviews today, hopefully they're out at the pool right now, or they may be down at the beach. I'm not sure where they are exactly. But hopefully I'll join them and chill out. And they've got my dog, so they're
Uh,
watching.
you are going on tour. You're going to be in Washington, D.C. I believe next week.
I think it's the 5th or the 6th. I'll be speaking at the Smithsonian one of those 2 days. Yeah.
Uh, how when you first went to the Smithsonian, because I've been there several times too. I've never ceases to amaze me what's there. Uh, what do you like about the Smithsonian? What's your favorite area?
Oh, well, I always go to natural history. That just to me, that appeals to me more than the science and technology, although the Space Museum is pretty fun also.
The dinosaur bones?
Yeah, yeah. I was an undergrad in Washington, D.C., so I spent time on the top floor of the Natural History Museum working on bones up there.
American University. I remember that from there was a radio host named Diane Rehm.
Oh, yes, I do remember Diane Rehm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
broadcasting from American University.
Mhm.
But there is so much in Washington. How did you manage to keep Tempe fresh or focused rather, not fresh, but focused on one thing when she's in Washington? Because there's a lot of distractions there.
There are. And she tries to take in some of she does go to she goes to the Bonsai Museum, I think of all, why not? But she's pretty focused on this case and on working the case that she's been asked to investigate.
Is there anything going on in the world today that you would like to be a part of, but just haven't been asked or you just don't have time to do?
The Olympics. I'd
Yes, the Olympics.
love to be an Olympian, but that boat has sailed.
Wow. But you could always sneak away and
Yeah,
go for a few days,
true. Yeah.
and what's your favorite sport? That leads me on
To play or to watch? I play
um
tennis.
you play
I like
tennis
tennis.
and
I'm starting to play pickleball because everybody seems to be switching to pickleball. Those are probably, I swim laps just for exercise. I can't say I enjoy it, but I swim.
how about to watch?
To what? Tennis. I do like to watch tennis. And right now the Nadal is playing who? Anyway, there's some good Olympic tennis on right now.
Yes, they're over at Roland Garros.
Yeah.
And you have any plans on going to Montreal later?
No, I'll be going to Calgary. I'm going to be going up out west to Toronto and Calgary, but the book tour, and I won't have time to go to Montreal. The book tour is going to focus on those two cities this time.
That's not, it's an exciting time, isn't it? Does, it still gets exciting every time you have a book coming out?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well,
The, and book tours, I love meeting my readers. I can't say I enjoyed the travel, the actual, schlepping through airport aspect of it, but I like being there and I like being able to interact with my readers.
When there was COVID going on, did you miss your readers?
Well,
Meeting your readers, rather. Meeting.
yeah, that year there was no tour, of course. There was no events, there was no tour. So I just hunkered in here at my beach house where I am now with two of my daughters and four of my grandkids. We were here together for like 4 months or something.
Wow, I tell you what, I tell you what, that is incredible. Kathy, the new book is called Fire and Bones. It comes out, or it came out, depending on when you're watching this or listening to this, on August 6th, 2024. Kathy Reichs, I thank you so much for being on Life Camera Author today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.